Some debts can never be repaid. At least that's what Robert and Diana Morgan spent 10 years convincing me. I'm Grace Chen, Senior Vice President of Morgan Financial Services, and until 3 months ago, I believed I owed everything to the Morgans. They'd given me my first job out of college, mentored me through the ranks, treated me like family, or so I thought. What I didn't know was that family came with a monthly price tag of $3,000, direct deposited into their personal account every month for the past 7 years. It started the way most manipulation does, subtly wrapped in the guise of gratitude and obligation. I was 25, newly promoted to investment manager, still glowing from closing my first major client. Grace, sweetheart, Diana had said during one of their frequent dinner invitations, Robert and I have been talking. We think of you as the daughter we never had. Robert nodded, swirling his expensive scotch. You've done so well here, thanks to our guidance. The youngest investment manager in the firm's history. I beamed with pride, not seeing the trap being laid. I'm so grateful for everything you've both done for me. About that, Diana continued, her voice honey-sweet. We're in a bit of a situation. The mortgage on a lake house, with the market downturn. By the end of that dinner, I'd agreed to help out temporarily with their $3,000 monthly mortgage payment. After all, didn't I owe them? Hadn't they shaped my entire career? 7 years later, I was still paying. Every promotion came with a reminder of their role in my success. Every bonus was accompanied by hints about their financial needs. They even convinced me to manage their investment portfolio for free, because we're family. I might have continued indefinitely if not for Alice Morgan. Alice was Robert's daughter from his first marriage, a quiet, watchful woman my age who'd been deliberately kept at arm's length from the family business. We'd met occasionally at company events, exchanged polite smiles. Nothing more. Until she showed up at my office one rainy Tuesday morning, clutching a worn leather briefcase. We need to talk, she said, closing my door. About my father, Diana, and what they've been doing to you. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, noting how her hands shook slightly as she opened the briefcase. What do you mean? Did you know my grandfather left a trust fund? She spread documents across my desk, bank statements, legal papers, investment records. Enough to pay off both houses, fund their retirement, everything. They're not struggling, Grace. They never were. The room seemed to tilt as I examined the documents. The trust fund was substantial, millions in diversified investments, property holdings, even a yacht I'd never heard mentioned. And I managed their portfolio. How had I never seen this? It's in a separate entity, Alice explained, reading my confusion. Under my grandmother's maiden name. I found the paperwork when I was cleaning out her house after she passed last month. My hands trembled as I did the math. 7 years of monthly payments, over $250,000 total, not counting the free financial management, the emergency loans that were never repaid, the investment opportunities I've been pressured to pass up because family needs come first. Why are you showing me this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Alice's eyes, so like her father's, but warmer, more honest, met mine, because they did the same thing to me, convinced me I was somehow less worthy than their chosen family member, you. Made me feel guilty for asking questions about my inheritance, kept me away from the business because I couldn't be trusted with the family legacy. She pulled out one more document, a letter. This is why I finally decided to say something. The letter was from Robert to Diana, dated just last week. In it, they discussed their plans to ask me for even more money, $5,000 monthly, to maintain their lifestyle. They also talked about how they'd manipulated both Alice and me over the years, playing us against each other while extracting maximum financial benefit from both relationships. Dad's planning to announce his retirement next month, Alice continued. He wants to make you his successor, not out of gratitude or recognition, but because they need you firmly under their control. They're going to ask you to buy them out at an inflated price, using their support of your career as leverage. My mind raced back through the years of subtle manipulation, the constant reminders of my debt to them, the way they'd isolated me from other mentors, discouraged me from building my own network, always positioning themselves as my only path to success. The board meeting, I said suddenly. Next week, Robert's going to announce the succession plan. Alice nodded. Along with the buyout proposal. They've already drafted the terms. Here. She handed me another document, this one showing a buyout price nearly triple the firm's actual value. I stood up and walked to my office window, looking out at the city skyline. The Morgan Financial Services logo crowned our building, a symbol of the legacy I thought I was part of. Now I saw it for what it really was, a facade hiding years of manipulation and lies. "What do you want?" I asked Alice, turning back to face her. "Justice," she said simply. "For both of us. I have a plan, but I need your help. And I think you'll want to hear it, especially once you see what else is in my grandmother's papers." I returned to my desk and picked up the trust fund documents again. "Tell me everything." What Alice revealed next would change not just our futures, but the entire future of Morgan Financial Services. And it all hinged on one crucial detail hidden in her grandmother's final amendment to the trust, a detail that Robert and Diana had never bothered to read. The final amendment to Eleanor Morgan's trust was a masterpiece of careful planning. Alice's grandmother, it turned out, had seen through her son's manipulative nature long before anyone else. The trust can only be accessed by direct descendants who hold active executive positions within Morgan Financial Services. Alice read aloud from the document. "If no qualified heir exists, control reverts to the most senior non-family executive." I leaned forward. "But you're a direct descendant, who's been deliberately kept out of the company," she finished. "And once Dad retires, the trust would go to the most senior non-family executive." My voice was barely a whisper, which would be me. The implications were staggering. Not only had Robert and Diana been lying about their financial situation, but they accidentally set up the perfect instrument for their own downfall. By keeping Alice out of the business while positioning me as the successor, they'd unknowingly triggered the trust's succession clause. We spent the next week preparing. Alice provided years of documented manipulation, emails, bank records, even recorded conversations. I compiled my own evidence, every payment I'd made, every loan they'd requested, every investment opportunity they'd pressured me to pass up. The board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. By Sunday night, everything was in place. Robert was in rare form that morning, practically glowing with self-satisfaction as he called the meeting to order. The boardroom was packed, all 12 directors present, plus key shareholders and executives. Diana sat in the observer section wearing what I knew to be a new designer suit, probably paid for with my last loan. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert began, "I've called this meeting to discuss the future of Morgan Financial Services. After 30 years as CEO, I believe it's time to pass the torch." He went on about legacy, about careful mentorship, about choosing the right successor. I sat quietly, watching Diana's smug smile grow with each word. They thought they had everything planned perfectly. "And so," Robert concluded, "I'm pleased to announce that Grace Chen will be taking over as CEO, effective next quarter. The terms of the transition, including the purchase of my controlling shares, are outlined in the documents being distributed now." The board members began reviewing the buyout proposal. I could see eyebrows raising at the inflated price. "Before we proceed," I said, standing up, "I have some additional documents for consideration." Robert's smile flickered slightly as I handed out my own folders. "This isn't necessary, Grace. We've already prepared everything." "Yes," I agreed pleasantly. "You certainly have been preparing for a long time. 7 years of preparation to be exact." Diana shifted uncomfortably in her seat as I clicked to the first slide of my presentation. "What the board needs to understand," I continued, "is exactly how we got here. Let's start with the personal payments I've been making to the Morgans since 2017. For the next 30 minutes, I laid out everything. The monthly mortgage payments, the manipulative dinners, the loans that were never repaid, the free portfolio management. With each revelation, Robert's face grew redder. "This is absurd," he finally exploded. "We gave you everything. Your career, your position. Actually," a new voice cut in, "you gave her nothing she didn't earn herself." Alice walked into the boardroom, carrying her grandmother's briefcase. Robert went pale. "Alice, what are you doing here?" "Fulfilling Grandma Eleanor's final wishes," she said, distributing copies of the trust amendment. "You might want to read this carefully, Dad, especially the part about succession." The board members were quick to understand the implications. Robert had effectively disqualified his own daughter from inheriting the trust by keeping her out of the company. and by positioning me as his successor while hiding the trust's existence, he'd inadvertently made me the legal successor to both the company and the family fortune. This is impossible, Diana sputtered. Robert, do something. But Robert was staring at the trust document, finally seeing his mother's subtle revenge. She'd known her son would choose greed over family, and she planned accordingly. There's more, I said quietly. The board should know that the Morgans have been maintaining a hidden portfolio separate from the company's official holdings, a portfolio that should have been disclosed in our regulatory filings. That got everyone's attention. In the financial services industry, hidden assets were a cardinal sin. We can explain, Robert began, but the board chairman cut him off. Mr. Morgan, I suggest you stop talking until your lawyer arrives. What followed was both justice and tragedy. The unavoidable collapse of a facade that had taken decades to build. The board voted to suspend Robert pending an investigation. Diana was escorted from the building. The buyout proposal was unanimously rejected. In the end, it was Alice who proposed the solution that saved both the company and her father's dignity, what little remained of it. Convert the firm to a public corporation, she suggested during an emergency board session. Use the trust assets to fund the initial public offering. Let the market determine the true value of Morgan Financial Services. It was elegant, fair, and completely by the book. The board approved the plan immediately. 3 months later, I sat in what had been Robert's office, now mine as the CEO of the newly public Morgan Financial Services, Incorporated. The company's stock was trading well. Our clients had stayed loyal, and our reputation had actually improved thanks to our transparent handling of the transition. Alice had taken her rightful place as chief legal officer, her law degree finally being put to use for the family business. The trust assets, now part of the corporate structure, were being managed ethically and profitably. Robert and Diana had relocated to their lake house, their lifestyle somewhat diminished, but still comfortable thanks to their shareholding in the public company. They hadn't spoken to either Alice or me since the board meeting. Quarterly reports are ready for review, Alice said, entering my office with a stack of documents. Much better numbers than when Dad was hiding half the assets. I smiled, remembering all those family dinners where Robert had lectured about integrity in finance. Your grandmother would be proud. Of both of us, Alice added. You know, she left one more document, a letter to whoever ended up running the company. Want to read it? The letter was simple but profound. Eleanor Morgan had written about the true meaning of legacy, about how real leadership isn't built on manipulation and fear, but on integrity and merit. She'd known the company would eventually need new blood, new perspectives, new leadership. Sometimes, she'd written, the best successor isn't the one you're born with, but the one you find along the way. The trick is recognizing true value when you see it. That evening, as I prepared to leave the office, I paused to look at the company logo. Still Morgan Financial Services, but now representing something very different from what Robert had built. My phone buzzed with a notification. Another automatic payment had been scheduled to the Morgans' account. But this one was different. It was a legitimate dividend payment to all shareholders, transparent and properly documented. Some debts can never be repaid, it's true. But some debts were never real in the first place. The real value of anything, a company, a relationship, a legacy, lies not in what you can take from it, but in what you can build with it. As I turned off the lights in my office, I saw Alice working late in hers, probably reviewing more of her grandmother's papers. We caught each other's eye and smiled. Sometimes the family you choose, or the family that chooses you, is more real than the one that tries to own you. The company's future was bright, built on a foundation of truth rather than manipulation. And every month, when the dividend payments went out, they carried a message that Robert and Diana had never understood. Real value doesn't need to be extracted through guilt and manipulation. It grows naturally when planted in the soil of integrity.